Please.
I want to make it very clear to the team that's here today that both Minister Champagne and Parliamentary Secretary Long have been inundated with questions in the House of Commons on the Auditor General report. And it's no surprise, with complaints increasing by 145% in the last 3 years, only 54% accuracy in responses, 17% when it's specific to tax questions, and the service standard being met only 18% of the time. It's no doubt that they should be held accountable and responsible for this. But what we're now hearing from them is that things are great. Everything is going fantastic. They are meeting the service standards and beyond as a result of this 100-day plan. But the real question is then, when did the work behind the 100-day plan begin? Was it before or after you received the Auditor General recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and well, when did the work begin? The work on this really began as we watched the results were deteriorating, and we actually did a consultation with Canadians in the fall to talk about service, and we were hearing feedback. And we know, obviously, the results are not what we want. So we started the work. How do we fix this? And I think we came up with the 100-day plan. I want to be careful. It is working well, and I think we're really pleased with the success. And it's driven an energy within the agency for change innovation, not just adding contact center agents, change innovation. So that's good. But this challenge is longer than a 100-day challenge. So we have to also be thinking about what can we do now that's going to help us in day 101 and down the road. And that's a really important preoccupation with us. So we're very pleased about what's happening now. The work had started earlier, but I think the 100-day plan was kind of a catalyst for...
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. But this is a government that has been in charge for 10 years. And the fact that even the complaints alone have gone up in the last 3 years by 145%, that tells me that this change was long overdue. 100 days isn't even a third of a year, which over 10 years, 100 days is nothing. So the fact that this is just being addressed now by this government through their direction to you, it's shameful for the reason that my previous colleague indicated, as a result of the significant impact that it has had on seniors, on families, on small businesses. This government has been in power for 10 years, and the fact that we just started this in the fall, to me, that fact is absolutely pitiful. Auditor General, thank you so much for your report and your continuous work for Canadians. You noted the service centre contract was originally signed with a minimum work guarantee of $50 million over 10 years, but is now almost quadrupled to $100 million and will rise to $214 million over the next 2 years. Did CRA Shared Services Canada have the data to back up why this contract increased so much? And if so, did the increases demonstrate value for money for Canadians? We've put some elements in our report about why the contract has increased. There were about 18 amendments once the contract was signed. And I think all of us have to sort of put ourselves back there for a second. In 2015, I'm not sure everyone could predict the pandemic. And the impact that would have on a surge in call volume. So I think some of that increase is explained by the need to beef up and have more accessibility, more agents on the line. That being said, there were many amendments that occurred before the contract even started, and there was difficulty for us to assess the value for money because there was little scrutiny on some of the invoices, and that's why we put some information about the contract, but I felt there was enough red flags that we are going to start an audit on the management of this contract with the goal of tabling it in Parliament in 2026 to hopefully help influence and amend, if needed, the new contract so that it can be better managed going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a small point of clarification, Mr. Hamilton. You said you consulted with Canadians in the fall. Was that correct? And was that the fall last year? Just could you be precise on that in your answer? And I wasn't sure you meant the spring, but I just thought I'd seek that clarification in case it came up.
Mr. Chair, I believe I'm correct on that, but we actually have someone online who can absolutely verify, and that's Mexican. Maybe I'll just...
Sure, yeah, just because, again, would that be this fall or last fall, or was it in fact the spring, please?
It was the fall of 2024, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, that lines up with exactly what Mr. Hamilton said, Commissioner Hamilton, so thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to our colleagues and all of our witnesses today. Chair, I'd like to start right off the bat by thanking and congratulating the honest Canadians who pay their taxes within the right deadlines. And I'd also like to thank sincerely all the workers of the CRA who come to work every day to serve the common interests of Canadians. But I've got a great deal to say against the Canada Revenue Agency. I've been in politics for 17 years and I've seen tens of reports from auditors and from the Auditor General. I've never seen such a devastating report as this one. Never. And that directly impacts the most humble people amongst us, namely citizens who are not having access to a professional accountant, can't pay for that. And it impacts also seniors who are always rather fearful when they have to fill in their tax return, and for families who are living from one paycheck to another each month and they need the government's assistance. And we're learning in this report here that 95% of the calls that we sent to the CRA were not respecting the set deadlines, and even worse than that, when people actually got on the line, four times out of five, they were given information that wasn't the right information. This is really shocking as a situation. We're talking about hamburger that's missing some ketchup. No, we're talking about having accurate information on people's taxes. People are always nervous when they call up this area, and 4 out of 5 times they're not getting the right answer. Are you not ashamed of that, Mr. Hamilton?
Monsieur le Président, je vais répondre.
Mr. Chair, I'll answer this question. Of course, we're disappointed with the performance over the last months and the period that was covered by the Auditor General. And we've made many efforts to improve the situation. It is important for people to have the opportunity to contact the agency. And certainly during this period, we're looking to have opportunities to get a more efficient information system. Perhaps before they place a call with the agency, for example, is it possible to get the best information on the web, to get the best information in the voice recognition with the self-serve options? But at the end of the day, we need people who are capable to take these calls. I'd like to reinforce the point that in most cases, over than 80% of the calls for specific accounts for taxpayers, there's good performance there. So it's important to point that out. But it's not to take away from the report of the Auditor General or minimise this. There is a sector, it's a small sector, it's 20% of the calls, with a sample of 167 calls where the results are not very good, as you have mentioned. But we are dedicated to finding the root cause, the source of these problems, and correct it, because that's important. But for Canadians, it's important to know that most of the calls that are taken by our agents get the right answers. We're not perfect. The system is very complex. People's circumstances are complicated. But from my point of view, we have a good performance with these calls. But we've got this commitment to continue to improve the situation. Mr. Hamilton, I'd like to thank you and congratulate you for answering French in respectable French. Thank you very much for doing that. But what you're saying is not satisfying me, and in particular not satisfying Canadians, where 4 out of 5 times they got the wrong information. Because when we receive the wrong information, we put that on our tax return, and in fact it wasn't the right information. But when Revenue Agency actually reviews this and they see that there's an error in good faith from the citizen, then they send a bill to the citizen. We're the ones that have to pay for it. But in fact, we're not responsible. You're responsible. Who's going to pay for the mistake that you made? Is it the honest citizen, or is it the CRA that's not able to do the job that they're paid for? Yes, thank you for that question. And perhaps I'll turn to my colleague Melanie to give a more detailed response. It is a problem. It certainly is a problem for us when someone gets the wrong information from us. We have certain processes in place to resolve problems when somebody receives the wrong information from an agent. Just a moment, says Mr. Dilton. Mr. Hamilton, just a moment. This person is acting in good faith. They receive the wrong information and they include it in their tax return. Then afterwards they say, no, it's not that. But are you asking people who've been taken to cleaners by you, where was there a mistake? Was it an official who gave you the wrong information? You can't imagine, Mr. Hamilton, what it's like for someone who gets a letter from the CRA. He opens it up and he realises that he's got a penalty, but in fact he was acting in good faith all along. Have you assessed the millions of dollars that you've collected from the pockets of Canadians based on inaccurate information? I very much appreciate the frustration of someone who finds themselves in that type of circumstance, and it's important to minimise that type of occasion arising. But I'd like to see if that sort of situation does arise. We have procedures in place for taxpayers. So how can taxpayers know whether it's their mistake or your mistake? No, it's our mistake. So you'd recognise that when the person has not correctly filled out their tax return and you send them a bill, are you recognising that it's your fault, but it's the person who has to pay for it? It really doesn't add up, what you're saying. Yes, we recognise that we've made mistakes. Yes. Sorry, I'm afraid that your time is up, Mr. Delzell. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Hogan and all of your team. And Mr. Hamilton, I'm going to kick off with you, in particular when it comes to the accuracy of the information and the services, to try and remind people that the report from the Auditor General has highlighted an enormous systemic problem when it comes to the performance assessment of agents that answer calls. So CRA employee can get a pass note at their evaluation if they punch in at the right time, if they take their break at the right time, and if they hang up at the right time as quickly as possible in general, and if they answer quickly, if they've got good behaviour. But if they're not able to give the right answer, it's not really serious, as is the case with over 80% when it comes to journal inquiries from individual taxpayers. If the person is not happy with the information they get, if they communicate well and they apply the procedures and policies, they can get over 60% of a pass mark for their performance. They'll be able to progress in their career, but we don't actually give value to the accuracy of the information, and the performance is not linked to that. Do you see a problem with that? Yes, once again, perhaps I'll ask Melanie to ask a few points or answer a few points on that. I think it was quite clear that there are some issues, certainly, issues that need to be corrected. And we think that we've got the right procedures and innovation that are going to equip us to be able to resolve these issues. But perhaps I'll turn to you, Melanie, to give more details. Yes, absolutely. And thank you very much for that question. And I'd just like to recall that we've got an evaluation programme on the calls and the exact information that our agents give to Canadians. And we do that by listening to over 130 million calls per year, which informs their performance and also the training that might be needed and coaching necessary for our agents. And we do that on a monthly basis. So 45% of their marks is allocated to the quality of the information provided to Canadians. Quality covers several aspects, including accuracy and if the information was complete. Having said that, we take account of the results, of course, of the Auditor General. There's always points that need to be improved, but we do this on a monthly basis. And training, just to share this with you around the table, training and the coaching for employees is something that we take very seriously. So they start their training with 2 to 13 weeks in the classroom for training, and then they have coaching for a few weeks after that to make sure that they are capable and able to offer an adequate, exceptional service, in fact, to Canadians, and also to make sure that they've got the right tools and the information that they need to do their work. So I'd like to talk about performance evaluation, which we see in the OAG report. You've talked about 45% of service and only 9% was given for accuracy and completeness. And when you talk about quality of service, you're talking about authentication. So it's better if you identify the person correctly than if you give the right information. And then when it comes to procedures and policies, such as identification, I think that's basically more of a general matter. I think that these criteria that are being applied would need to be evaluated themselves, because it seems that it's being run by a private firm. If you can answer lots of calls quickly, then that's even better for your performance review and to be able to climb up in your career. So the most important criterion is not to give the right answer to the taxpayer. So for me, there is a real systemic problem there. So is that part of that 100-day plan to actually review this performance review grid? And if so, could you provide it to the committee as soon as it's available? Yes, thank you very much for that question as well. When it comes to accuracy as part of the performance marks for the agent, authentication is very important for the agent because protection of individuals' information is absolutely critical so that we can make sure that we're speaking to the right person and that we've got the right information. That's why identification, authentication is part of their performance. Then when it comes to accuracy, we cover that within a mark, which is about 15.95% of the total to go into the details. And one part of this mark deals with accuracy, but the other part of this mark is to make sure that the action that the agent has undertaken to complete the request of the individual has been done correctly. So can we look at this from a different angle? But basically, as I've said from the outset, we're taking the results seriously that have come from the OAG. And it's something that we're looking at in our 100-day plan and beyond, because, of course, we're getting ready for the next tax filing season. Now, on AI now, we know that your motor got 2 out of 6 answers that were right, which was better than the general answers. But 5 out of 6 were right for ChatGPT. Now, I haven't seen an action plan to actually correct the AI engine. So is that going to be part of what we can expect to see in the next 100 days? Yes, absolutely. Just to make that a bit more specific, our Jenny chatbot, which is on canada.ca, was not actually part of the scope of the OAG study. Why? It's because it's a pilot beta version. So as is the case in any responsible company, we didn't want to implement an AI tool on a broad scale because we're still testing it. So Canadians know that when they're using it, it's written it's a beta version. And when the OAG was carrying out their study, we explained that the contents from the AI that was recognized by the AI engine was very limited. That's why it was not able to answer the questions in a satisfying way, the questions that were put to it during the study. In fact, however, as of next month, our plan, because we've had this in production about 7 months now, and we've been testing it and getting feedback from Canadians to see whether this is working well. No, it's not working well. Then they give it a thumbs down. But next month, we're going to extend the sweep of questions to which it can answer, and it will include subjects for corporations and so on. So that is part of our 100-day plan. And thank you very much.